what helps an independent artist establish what we call a cult following, what we call a dedicated family of sorts that ends up, being fans or a buying fan base, a money spending fan base. It's consistency, right? And consistency in your delivery, consistency in the level that you create at, and consistency in your presentation, and most importantly, a consistency in the idea and the message that you're building your career around,
From CNR JUTA DE BEER, imina Msindisi wesizwe, umvelisi ngomelisi wesizwe, formerly known as Lwazi Madonsela, bringing you a show about creative entrepreneurs live from the landmark that not only birth SA street culture but also formalize the street hustle. On today's episode, we have
Vaughn Thiel. I never asked this question, but I think from my understanding of what you do, you've curated culture for a lot of artists. You've curated rollouts. Now you're working with festivals and you keep expanding even what you're doing, bringing in bars, the fiends, and everyone in regards to Staylow entertainment, right?
Yeah, man. I think, from the outside looking in, sometimes it can be quite confusing about the exact role that I play within the business. I think my background was working as an independent record label executive, as well as running an agency from about 2016 till about the top of 2020. And just before lockdown really kicked in, or in the middle of lockdown, the business that I was running at the time alongside Fred Kayembe got absorbed by the Stains into Stain Entertainment, and we sort of joined the team. And from that point, yes, my designation has been to start up Staylow under the umbrella, which is an independent record label and management business. But because of the ecosystem at Stain Entertainment, we end up working across different portfolios that fall under the umbrella. So one of them being Rocking the Daisies as a festival, our In the City property, the Hallmark House as a building. These are just sort of a few, the Marabi Club. So these kind of have teams that are assigned to them, but when you are somebody sort of in the sort of senior bracket within the business, you kind of end up working across the different properties and adding value where you can. So yeah, I still work very much with a very strong focus on the music side of things. So I work very much with the Staylow team and the artists there. And then, that's where the rollout stuff comes in, and executively producing some albums, and artist development is a big focus of mine. But naturally through that, there's relationships that I've built and certain things that we've managed to achieve on a music level that, I look at it and go, oh, this might make sense, bringing it across to the festival. And then I would meet up with the festival team, which the main focus would be Shannon. She's our general manager there. So Shannon would, I'd sit with Shan, and I'd sit with, obviously Dale, the director, Fred, and we would see, what relationship I might have founded on the music side and how this works across the different platforms. So it's really just about tying the ecosystem together.
Integrating everything together.
Exactly, when it makes sense,
I think the biggest question I've always wanted to ask, because you've proven in the past that you can actually make an independent alternative act go mainstream.
Yeah.
And you've proven to do that post the normal rollout where everyone will go the TV route. You actually know how to build a cult following.
Yeah.
Right. And you've helped a couple of other acts, and we've had notable releases under you, including Anxiety and.
Yeah.
What would you say is the one thing that actually helps an independent act pop off?
I think there's a lot of things that happen. I'll be honest with you. I always tell artists this that I work with is the first thing is that you have to be fire. You know what I mean?
How do you know I'm fire?
Yeah.
Because I know I send it to the girl who likes me. She say, yo, it's kind of fire. Yeah. But how do I actually know I'm fire?
Look, I guess it is subjective. That is subjective, and it doesn't mean if I don't think you're fire that you're not fire, But I think the first thing I need to feel from an artist for me to work with them is that thing. There's a thing that I feel. It's a difficult thing to put into words, but I feel inspired and I see something. And when I see something, it's more not necessarily about the vocal or the ability to rap or the ability to write. It's never something as technical as that. It's more of this feeling that I get and I go, there's an idea here. There's a whole idea, right? And when I feel that, then I know that I can work with you. And then from that point, what helps an independent artist make it, and the advice that I always give independent artists that are taking sort of an alternative route to their art, and which is very true to themselves, Obviously you have to be true to yourself.
Yeah.
That goes without saying. It's like the cliche thing. But honestly, it's consistency. You know, I think that what helps an independent artist establish what we call a cult following, what we call a dedicated family of sorts that ends up, you know, being fans or a buying fan base, a money spending fan base. It's consistency, right? And consistency in your delivery, consistency in the level that you create at, and consistency in your presentation, and most importantly, a consistency in the idea and the message that you're building your career around. You know, a lot of the time people want to feel represented. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think about like the stuff I like, and I'm pretty sure you're a smart person and like a conceptual guy. So when you listen to stuff or when you appreciate things, it's usually because somehow, somewhere, it's made you feel part of it. It's made you feel like you belong
in that community.
Exactly, and it represents something that you stand for, that you think about. You know, so when you know that that's a human truth, it's like, okay, when you analyze yourself as an artist, as an independent artist, it's like, okay, I'm pretty good at making music. I'm a good songwriter. I'm a good rapper. Like, but what am I doing? What's the thing that I'm doing, right? What is the message? What is the idea that I'm building this career around? And then when you start finding that or establishing that, the consistency in delivering within that space is important. Because a lot of the artists we look at today, man, like, they've been doing it for 10 years, bro. 11 years, dude. And only then are they making the kind of money that we imagine they would be making, you know? Because of that consistent representation, the consistency in the message, and that builds an appreciation and a love that really is difficult to shake once you've established it. It's not a quick thing though, hey? Like, happens over time.
Speaking about representation, we've noticed like right now we're hearing a lot of AI music. Like, it's like everyone is pandering with their music, given the Grammys, how everything was rolled out, how things are taking place. How do you feel about that? As someone, I've noticed from the catalog and the people that you have signed under you, you're very much a purist, and you actually believe in artists actually growing their thing. Yes. How do you feel about that pushback to music right now, where it's like we're saying catchy words that we know already on Twitter?
Yeah. Are you talking about the actual system of AI? Yeah. Like the artificial intelligence that's producing music now?
Affecting the music and everything.
Yeah, man. You know, I've had a couple of conversations with people about this. The reason why I've had a couple of conversations about it is because I actually don't know what to think about AI exactly when it comes to the music space. I do think that there's a part of AI that might do some benefit, and this is like maybe this is me just playing a very objective perspective here, right? Yeah. Because the way that I feel is like, I'm like, yo, man, like, get out of here with that shit, like, you know what I'm saying? But I'm trying to look at it and go, I wonder if there is value, and maybe what the value is that it sets a bar, and maybe that eliminates some potential trash. I don't know, right? But then again, what is trash? What is good? I mean, you know,
still subjective.
Exactly. But my initial feelings about it is, man, like, I just feel like, you know, creativity is such a beautiful human trait. You know, it's essentially the thing that has separated us from other mammals and animals on the planet. You know, like, when I think about creativity, I'm like, yo, when people talk about, like, if you're religious or whatever the case is, when people talk about, like, made in God's image or God, I see God in humanity or whatever the case is, I think that's what it is. The ability to create, you know, the ability to make things like this, like music, like cribs and cars, like that stuff is very godlike, right? And I think when you remove the soul that comes from a person like doing that shit, I just think it loses some of the purpose of why we've been given these abilities. And I think, like, the machine way, it's replicating human pattern and it's not necessarily innovating. And I feel like that's maybe where
the disconnect.
Yes, exactly. Like where the factory setting thing comes in and like pump out the same stuff because data says that this works. It's like, man, data anything that's unbelievable that's happened has been against what data might suggest. That's why it's unbelievable. You know what I'm saying?
Speaking of data, right? I always think about the rollout, the packaging, right?
Yeah.
And I think you've been in this industry long enough, and right now you're viewing it from a way different perspective, because you're not just looking at an act in a way we'd look at it. Like,
sure.
Oh, they just dropped an album. You're also thinking, would they fit this type of concept? Would you roll them out this way?
Yeah.
Would I get a feature from this type of act, and how you'd position them? What would you say is the best way you package yourself as an independent act?
Sure. Look, I think it's very difficult when you are independent in the sense that it's just you, hey? Like you, the only person. Like you're making the music, you're writing the songs, you're coming up with ideas. Like it's a very difficult task when it's just you. So I think the immediate answer to that, I would say that get some good people around you, even if it's one or two people that you trust their creative ability or their ability to conceptualize with you. I think opinions assist in that. So you might find an answer in that process, right? But outside of that, I think from a strategical point of view, the best way to package yourself as an independent act stems from that idea that you had initially about what you're going to build the foundation of your career off, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like if I'm an artist that believes that let's think about like one specific idea. Like as an artist, I'm an independent artist. I make acoustic music. I'm alternative. Okay, that's my natural inclination. That's where I feel most represented. That's how I connect, right? That's the feeling I get when I make music like that is, this is me, right? When you know that that's you, okay, go like, okay, cool. What do I generally want to tell people? Like, because an art is expression, right? So at some point you're wanting to put across a message, whether that message be slightly superficial or whether it be deep or philosophical, that's irrelevant. It doesn't have nothing. Not all ideas have to be deep. You know what I'm saying? So once you've identified that, I would say that okay, you now have your purpose. Let's say, for instance, this acoustic artist, his purpose is he wants to encourage freedom of thought. That's his main thing. He's like, I need to encourage freedom of thought. Okay, cool. Freedom of thought is the main big concept idea. Now we make a debut album. How is this debut album going to start speaking about this idea of freedom of thought?
Yeah.
Are we going to do it literally? Are we going to do it subconsciously? Are we going to do it over time? Is it a trickle? Is it a little drip feed kind of concept we want to start doing? And then from that point you go, okay, within the massive broad idea of freedom of thought, I'm going to create an album called Sometimes I Wonder, right? And Sometimes I Wonder is going to be an album based off of the idea that I'm going to challenge some everyday things that we accept, and I'm going to create a possible alternative way of thinking about it as my song titles or as the content that I'm going to write about, right? And then I'm going to find a sonic that maybe lends itself towards what it would feel like or how you would imagine daydreaming or deep thought. What kind of instruments lend itself to creating a bed of music that could represent that. So like I'm saying now, do you see how we're going? We've started up a high level concept, breaking it down a little bit to say, Sometimes I Wonder. That's the album title. Oh, sounds crazy. That's dope. Oh, I can feel like what a visual could look like. You see. So now we're starting to package it, but it has to start from something real. Like it has to start from something that, like, true to you, and then really what you want to say. It's not too difficult once you've done that. Sometimes as the artist it is difficult, man, because artists are like artists. They write, or they today they feel this way, today they feel that way, and that's why a team helps. But yeah,
right. You speak of Sometimes I Wonder, right? And then at my core, researching and understanding, it's like you're a strategist at heart. Like that's what you do.
Yeah.
You've been thinking of ways at some stage, agency level, then send into music. Now you've broadened it a bit further, right? But what's that thing that actually told you that you don't need to be the front man to make things happen? Because a lot of us, you might find that, I really love music, but because I can't sing or I can't rap or I can't write, I don't know where to place myself within music. How did you know where to place yourself?
Yeah, man. Sure. I think I think the best way to describe it would be that like you said, man, I did start working as a strategist through agencies. So there was like this sharpening that happened in the background where, you know, you get some clients and some campaigns that you're not really passionate about, but you're trying to find ways to make that interesting, or how can I like angle this, and how can this make sense, and like how does this advert work, or, you know. So I think that what was happening in the back of my mind was like I was sharpening a skill in the background that has helped me throughout my life, which is a certain way of thinking, you know. And when it came down to the music stuff, you know, I didn't necessarily one day go, I'm gonna do music. Like I didn't decide that. I've always been like a music person. I grew up listening to hip hop like most of my life, R&B, soul music. Like these are things that, like, because of where I grew up, the guys that I grew up with.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I played football, man. So I was like friends with like dudes from like the hood and like guys from all over Africa, and it was like this cultural melting pot that I was part of. So I was introduced to a lot of different cultures and sounds and like lifestyles and stuff very early on. So I've always been inclined creatively in that way because of that stimulation. But with the career that I ended up finding myself in through the agency, the skill was sharpening. And then one day, through opportunity, which wasn't necessarily planned, I met JR one day in a park at a birthday party. From there, boom, we had a conversation, liked the way I thought, I digged him, we went to studio together, he invited me. When I was there, met an artist, that time it was Shane Eagle, started working on stuff with JR. Did a long story short, I learned about the industry within 8 months, just like hanging with the guys, hanging with JR, being friends, watching it, going like, oh, this is cool, man, I've always been passionate about this. And then in 2016, which was a year or so after I met the guys, I was carrying on with my life. But in 2016, I actually stopped and said, you know what? I want to start my own business, and I think I'm going to do this music thing. So it was because I had found opportunity, I had learned about it, and I had applied the skill set that I had developed over the years. I just applied it in that industry. Because also what I noticed in the industry, I was like, a lot of people don't think here. Like, a lot of it's like it's like not a lot of thinking is happening. There's a lot of stuff happening, and like I'm sure in pockets there's been like some thought, but I'm like, it just feels like for the most part folks are like stumbling into things, you know. And I was like, there's opportunity. That's sort of what I felt. This is an opportunity that I think I can add value in. I'm going to find out how. And then I just sort of took that skill set and started implementing it. So the how did I place myself thing happened kind of naturally, because I was like, I can't rap, like I can't sing, but I do have an idea for you, and let me see how I can make that happen, you know. And then and then I think it just started happening, like how I don't know, just like how like you said earlier, you know, when you have a bit of intention and like when you're driven, you find yourself making things happen, you know.
That's the one question I've actually been holding out on.
Okay.
How do I make money in music without making music?
Yo, man, I wish I knew that answer too. Damn, it's crazy. Okay, but I do know how you make money, all right? So let's talk about the music industry and the ways that you can make money, right? So as are you saying not as an artist?
Not as an artist.
As a businessman.
You can be inclusive either way.
Okay, cool. So we'll include it both, yeah. So as an artist, it's quite straightforward. You make music. That music makes income directly from streams. You make music. That music is popular. You get performances and shows. That music is popular. You get brand deals and campaigns. That music does well. You get publishing, songwriting, composing, right? Those are usually the main income streams for an artist. Now, as a businessman or as a manager is different. If you sign a direct management deal with an artist, you're going to get 20% across all those income streams. Yeah, streams, brand deals, shows, publishing. You usually get your 20% cut on those things.
This is only financial, doesn't include royalties, nothing else.
So streaming is royalties, publishing is royalties. So the artist would receive whatever they get a year from the royalties, and then they would cut their manager 20%, because the manager would maintain all the relationships with the distributors, with the label, with the publisher, with the brand deals. They would be working across the board. It would be your essentially your artist's personal manager, right?
quick question.
Sure.
This is just from a fan perspective.
Sure.
So now, if we cut our management deal, do you still get the royalty 20%? Because that's the work we did then.
Are you saying that you've done some work prior?
Like we do work,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Collecting your 20 everywhere, right?
Yes.
And then I change management.
Yes.
Do you still get your 20 for the work we did prior?
Like continuously?
Yes.
No, you wouldn't. Your new manager would then tap in. However, depending on what kind of contract you had with that manager. So like, let's say that manager signed a contract with the artist that has a sunset clause. A sunset clause would see that, okay, after the period or after termination, for the next 5 years, I would get 10% of whatever I achieved with you in that period.
Yeah.
So you might find situations like that. That would be a clause in a contract, but it would be on negotiation. But for the most part, generally speaking, let's say you've seen out your term with your manager, you guys say, no, Sharp, that was a good one. You get a new manager. That manager then would plug into your income streams as his remuneration. Because the manager's going to be doing work off the bat, straight up. And then you're going to have to find a way to remunerate him. Some managers could find themselves getting paid like a salary. Others could get 20% commission. So that would be across the different income streams for an artist. That's on a management level.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that management level can also be a business. So you could be signed to a management business, which sometimes is advisable because you have access to a lot more minds, you have access to a lot more resource potentially, and it just adds a certain level of value, right? So that management business now signs an artist. Now we're talking about how you make it as a business. So that management business signs a couple artists on a management deal. They're making 20% across the portfolio of artists that they have for however long the term is, right? So that's one way in the music industry. Another way is a record label. Now a record label comes with high risk, crazy high risk, okay? And it comes with quite a large amount of money that you need, let's say, for initial investment.
Yeah.
And as a record label, you sign an artist, you depending on the artist, there's usually a negotiation, or maybe there's an advance, or there's a rental allocation, or there's a whatever the value might be, right?
Yeah.
You negotiate that. The label then owns the masters essentially, and there's a royalty split done with the artist. So the artist gets a percentage of the income generated from the masters. Yeah, and the label retains ownership, and usually, in the most part, gets the majority income share of the streams because of the risk they're taking. The risk they're taking is that they are going to now invest into marketing, invest into PR, invest into music videos, invest into camps and merch and to essentially kickstart this artist's career.
What happens when the artists don't make it? We've seen a lot of artists. You'd see them crazy investment. You'd see them everywhere. They become presenters everywhere, and then just goes quiet.
Yeah. So that's the thing, right? Every time. So it also depends on now, like the type of artist you are signing. But let's say you sign like a potential, a development act, someone that you believe is going to be good, and you invest in the money into them, and you do the thing, and then let's say it doesn't materialize in the way that you hoped within the 4-year, 5-year deal or whatever it is. Essentially what happens at that point is that usually the artist looking at their account being unrecouped, the label then decides at that point and says, okay, look, do we think it is valuable to extend this artist's deal and to continue pushing this music to, because, hey man, some artists break in 7 years and then they break crazy, right? Some artists take
like
3.
Questa.
You see, Questa was doing it for 11 years before he popped, you know? So imagine the label stayed with him and then he popped. It's like, oh, the 11 years is paid back in a couple of months with the hits and the traction you got, right?
Yeah.
So you got to like weigh that up. So that's a little bit of your intuition and a little bit of your savviness around like what you think might happen, right? Or looking at the landscape. But let's say you don't. Let's say you say, no, like we don't think this is a valuable investment going forward. Then essentially the artist then becomes a free agent, right? They are now able, the deal's done, they are now able to move on to a different label or whatever it may be, go independent. But then the thing is, what the sort of underpinning security that a label technically has is depending on how many masters did you negotiate with that artist to get. So like if I did a deal to get 4 albums and I've invested X amount, the artist's unrecouped. At some point, I'm going to be recouped off the 4 albums that I own because the artist is not going to get their royalty split until they're recouped. So I'm going to make 100% of that streaming income of those 4 albums up until the artist is recouped. Once the artist is recouped, then you would pay them their 20% going forward. So you technically have looking at it as a label going, okay, we underpinning our risk here with assets in the masters, right?
Yeah.
But you still got to work those masters. You still got to market them. So you got to balance the investment into marketing it and the streaming income coming in to find a good, healthy balance to keep developing artists.
Damn, the music kids are gonna enjoy this one.
Yeah.
For me, right?
Yeah.
You do all this phenomenal work. You change these people's lives, these type of events, how this product is sold, right? What's in it for you? Like, what's your personal growth? Because you're always at the helm in these situations.
Yeah.
But what's it for you?
Yeah, like outside of like building a successful business, man, the thing that really like, the thing that keeps me up at night and the thing that really like motivates me is I believe in these people that I work with. Like I truly believe in them, and I know where they come from. You know, I know I appreciate the arts and I appreciate the artists like quite deeply. So the personal satisfaction that I get from watching somebody reaching their potential, like from watching the idea that I saw in them 4 years ago, 3 years ago, like start materializing, is like there's no real like money and like success for that can feel as good as that, you know, for me. I really want them to get what I feel like they deserve, you know. So I think like that's like the thing that I hope I get out of this, like at the end of the day, like, you know, one day in my life. But it's also the thing that like would deeply like I think like if I'm being honest and like vulnerable, it would deeply like bother me if like it didn't happen for some of them, you know, because I truly like wanted to happen for them. So I think like that's what I get out of it from on a personal level, you know. I'm working on like, you know, managing that, because being on the business side is you got to be objective and you got to make business decisions. You know what I'm saying?
It's our most important question as a show, right? Because I create this show for the kid in grade 9 who's trying to decide what subjects, for the kid who's trying to decide, do I need higher education, to the kid who's like, maybe this internship was enough for me to actually try it on my own.
Yeah.
What's your word to the youth?
I think like one of the ideas for my life, right, has been I'm trying to create an idea with my life that you can achieve these quite significant things in society, and you can sit in boardrooms and create financial forecasts to like multi-million rand businesses and dollar businesses, and like still be like this type of guy, you know, like be someone like that's eccentric, that's a little different, that doesn't fit sort of a mold or a box. And I think for the kids, I think that there's a lot of value in empowering yourself. So I do think that an education is important, not necessarily for the idea of education itself, but for what that skill teaches you. A lot of the time I was doing a job that I'm not doing today, but at that time it was sharpening something in me that I wasn't aware of at that time. You know, it was sharpening the way I thought about stuff, the strategy side of things. And all of that came from, I studied some marketing, I went to Boston Media House, I did a diploma in this thing, I did a couple of online courses, and I did carry on with that, you know, regardless if I was playing football or if I was working part-time, like those are opportunities that came up. So I think for the kids, man, like I do think you should empower yourself, whether that be through your school. Pick subjects that encourage thinking, and critical thinking I think is quite important. And if you have the means and the opportunity to pursue a tertiary education, I would suggest doing it. There's multiple reasons why I think that's great. One of them is culturally. You know, when you leave school and you go onto campus, man, like you meet so many different people. Like your world changes.
Everything changes.
You know what I'm saying?
You don't even know what you like until you get there.
Exactly. So that part of life, I think, is quite important, you know. And I think giving yourself the opportunity to experience that is vital. But don't feel like you need to fit a prototype to be a success. You know, you can do it on your own terms, but you gotta understand that you're doing it from a place of like a pure intention, and not to like put a middle finger to the system. That's not like what my intentions were, but somehow it landed up sort of being that way, you know. And sorry, the last thing I would say is like take really hold relationships close that believe in you. Yeah, hold those ones close, man. People that believe in you are vital.
Ladies and gentlemen, Vaughn Thiel, Staylow.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you for this.
Thank you, brother.
Koning Juta De Beer, like and subscribe. Whatever the baddies say. Nah, this was good.